Hello everyone, and welcome back to another WARNO Deck Deep Dive, this time featuring 39th, and it is still the best deck for new players here. We went over it, for example, in the Build Your First Deck kinda tutorial, and now we're gonna go into the latest deck deep dive, as the deck has changed quite a bit. The last time we looked into it has been a long while ago, but ever since this game came around, this has been the go-to division for new players in my eyes, and it is still the best there, whilst also being just quite meta again now, thanks to a couple of nice solid buffs. So let's jump in here into the logistics step. BMP1, K3, the first of 3 CV cards, 7 CVs in general, 2 in the tank depth, 2 in the infantry, 3 here. So you can use your infantry and your tank leaders a bit for frontline leadership as well. The BMP is the choice because it's the only 3 leader card here, with the other 2 or 3 options only having 2 availability. And then 3 logistics cards, because your artillery can eat up through them quite nicely, but you still have enough supply this way so that you can afford reloading your artillery and you don't have to buy supply point here. No forward operation base, no FSP necessary. Infantry tab, really strong as well. One of the strong points of the division for sure, as you have all things covered. You have your CVs, you have your ATGMs with the Conquerors, which is a really solid, cost-efficient ATGM with the BTR and some veterancy. It's really quite strong. Saperis and Saperi RPOs coming along as well. As always, you can find the deck down in the description down below in the deck list, just as the other decks from these deck deep dives if you want to use it yourself. And yeah, Motostrelki here, BMP 1P coming along, and that's the cheap option. The more expensive option comes with the BMP2 here, with the RPG-22 squadrons. So you have some cheap ATGMs and IVs here with the Motostrelkis, some bit more expensive one, and then you have some fast Motostrelkis here with the Motostrelkis and BTRs, and the Motostrelki Medis and BTR. So you have really quick reinforcements for the front line as well. They are relatively efficient as well. 8 hit points here, and 7 hit points on this one. Medi's still pretty solid, not amazing, but it still does its job decently. And yeah, the BTR really gives you nice speed, plus some solid firepower as well, so everything here works quite well. The lack of bigger squads, sure, that's a bit of an issue of the Soviets, but you get enough availability here to get you through a game as well. Artillery is the next step. There we have the Grad and the Akatsiya. No mortars, so the Akatsiya will have to do smoke if necessary as well, but it can do that. The Grad, even after the nerfs, if you get it close enough to the front line, still is really helpful there as a unit that can pin down enemies, that can hit enemy tanks. You just need to get a bit closer than before, but still can kill nicely. And the cost here of the other slots is pretty low, but I found that you need the other things in the other tabs a bit more than a mortar, though smoke mortars can be quite good, but this deck is not the one that wants to get close and comfortable with smoke anyways. You have your BMPs as fire support, you have your tanks as fire support, you want to fire over longer range with ATGMs as well, so smoke is not as necessary as in some other decks. Tank tab, a strong one as well, especially after the buff of the Cocon ATGM, and that means that the Storm here now is a really strong ATGM vehicle. It has insanely long range and really solid damage and speed on that ATGM now as well. Accuracy is good as well, so this thing here is really affordable and can dominate open spaces, one-shot IFVs for you, and damage tanks that try to get to you. Rapira functions similarly, only that it can deal with enemy tanks as well, and enemy infantry as well, and it has better stealth, so you can hide it a bit better. But the Storm obviously is a bit more mobile, so both options together go quite nicely. And then you have your T80s here, 8, one with 2 veterancy, that's what you want to get early on to win the early game, and then a bit more here with a card without veterancy, so that you get 8 heavy tanks still. They are still quite good. Obviously, there are tanks that are a bit more efficient with the M1A1 and the Leos even after the nerf, I would say, though with the nerf the Leos are pretty close, but having an ATGM, having an autoloader gun with good accuracy, having good frontal armor makes a T80VV still a really good workhorse, so this still works out quite nicely. Recon gives you some solid infantry options as well. The Mod Ratchetka only have the BMP-1P, so I didn't find them too useful. I'd rather take the Ratchetka Saperi, as they can win against other Recon infantry, and they are quickly on the front line with the BTR, and then some cheap Ratchetkas here for the flank, where their RPG can come in helpful as well, and just as a cheap and easy to go around Recon squad. And the Mi-24K is really important in this deck, because that's a tool that you want to use against decks that have a bit more speed than you, but lack forward deploy AA. Against those decks, the Mi-24K can come in really helpful, and you can also use it for a bit of helo rushing in the early game. If you bring this one together with some other helicopters, it can do that really nicely as well. So the Mi-24K, just a really nice tool for the arsenal here as well, for 39th. So I really enjoy using this thing as well. Strong armed recon helicopter, one of the strong things in the Soviet arsenal for sure, and especially in this deck, I find them quite useful. AA is a solid one as well. You have the Iglas, you have the Strelas. Osa can be quite nice as well, though the Strela has the same range against helicopters, and that's the key thing, and you don't have to turn them off against seat, so it's a bit easier to micro the Strela, plus it's a bit cheaper as well. Yeah, the Osa is really solid as well, and it's faster, but the price point here, the price difference, and the radar versus non-radar makes the Strela M a bit more appealing and a bit easier to use in my end. If you use it to the maximum, I feel like the Osa might be the better choice, but the Strela is the easier choice for sure. Coupe, really good long-range AA, reliable, and can be used to push away, kill off enemy planes, one-shots the cheap ones, so that is quite nice as well with its 9 damage. So Coupe, always a good addition, 110 points, quite the bargaining for such a cheap long-range AA. Only that it doesn't have 3000 meter range against helicopters is a bit annoying, so you really don't want to use it against helicopters, but in the need, it can still come in somewhat helpful there as well. Helicopters, good tap as well. The Mi-24V AT is your standard workhorse. It has 8 cocons, so it can deal with enemy vehicles, especially IFVs, quite nicely. And the cocon, since the speed buff, really quite useful ATGM. Beforehand, you always had to stick around a bit too long. Now you can fire one, 2800 meter range being good as well, and then just leave afterwards. The 80mm rockets can do some good damage as well, and the 8 cocons really, with the higher speed and through that also a bit higher rate of fire, quite powerful. Mi-24V AA, helpful to deal with enemy helicopters, especially the light ones. Also quite solid rocket helicopter in general as well. So that's a nice addition. And then the Mi-24VP, a bit higher survivability, plus the double 23mm gun that also can run things down. If the enemy is running low on AA or doesn't have any really around, this thing can go ham. So that's why it is in here. The gun turret being easier to use than the 30mm that doesn't have much angle because it's slaved to the chassis of the helicopter. So the gun here, a bit easier to use, can be pretty powerful as well. And then air is mostly there for the defense with the MiG-23 and the Su-27. Su-27, one of the best fighters in the game, as for its price point, with 10 missiles, 30 ECM, and 10 really good missiles. It is really, really strong. And the MiG-23 can go for helicopter hunting and so on if need be as well, can be a nice assistance as well. At least this one has 6 missiles, though it's not the best missiles. And then the MiG-27A LGB is there to one-shot anything of importance that needs one-shotting. The other options here can be solid as well, like for example the S-22. This can be pretty decent. Not the biggest fan of this thing, but yeah, this one can be quite decent. Su-25s can be decent as well, but the MiG-27 does get the job done, and that's why I'm using these guys here. As you don't want to use air too much, but if you want to use it, you need to get the job done, so the Su-27's there really getting you out of it. So yeah, in general, a deck that has no real weaknesses. The only thing that it lacks is forward deployment, but you can play around that nicely with the Mi-24K. Still get some infantry in there. You still have some quick wheeled infantry that can come in and get some fire support with the BTR in the early fights. Saparis get you some decent CQC. You have your IFVs in good forms and shapes, cheap and good, with the BMP-2 and the BMP-1P. Tank tab, functional as well, both as anti-tank and as pushing power with heavy boys. AA, really reliable, getting everything done as well. Helicopter, quite strong, pretty cost efficient, especially since the Cocoon buff. So in general, a really powerful deck again, and I'm absolutely enjoying playing this. And yeah, if you do, let me know down below as well. If you want to see another deck, let me know which deck you want to see next. And as I said, check them out in the deck list as well if you need some decks to start the game with. That's it. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day. Bye bye, and see you next time.